Hello, Mark. How are you?
Oh my God, so good. My wife's being held prisoner at Lumen, and I just got brain surgery in my basement. How have you been?
When people ask me how my mental health is doing as we approach the final episodes, I'm like,
Oh my God, so good.
Episode 9 is a massive setup for what promises to be an explosive finale. Do we finally know who this guy is? Is Helena planning to switch bodies with Gemma? And could a 1960s episode of The Twilight Zone reveal what Severance is truly about? Stick around, because trust me, you don't want to miss this one. We open with Helena Egan swimming laps in a luxurious pool, conveniently located across from Lumen headquarters. Interesting choice, considering she nearly drowned just a few episodes ago. The director focuses on this swimming pace clock, a metaphor for the relentless passage of time. Helena, just like her innie, is stuck in an endless loop, no matter how hard she tries to escape. She's preparing for work, dressed in Lumen blue, the color of the innie world. And speaking of James Egan, today is a momentous day. Cold Harbor is almost complete, and Drummond insists it'll be Lumen's finest hour. But even a simple egg breakfast isn't good enough. On Helena's first day, we learned James' favorite breakfast was raw eggs. This was a test, proof that Severance works. And check out this decorative plate. A man held down by two women, one in blue and one in red. That really makes me think of Mark, held down by Helly, the innie, and Helena, the outie. But look at the black hats, just like the black key cards, the black bandages, and of course, James Egan, always dressed in black. Lumen's control is absolute. Now here's where things get crazy. The egg represents severance, the separation of the mind. It also symbolizes fertility, which plays right into a theory I've been obsessed with. Helena might be pregnant. While sneaking into Irv's house, Drummond discovers he's been investigating Lumen, a huge no-no. But that's not the real shocker. Episode 9 reveals that Burt Goodman, the kind, artistic man we met in Season 1, was actually a hitman for Lumen, or, as he puts it, a driver. He would drive targets into the woods, and when his innie took over, bam, the job was done. His outie lived a blissful, trauma-free life, while his innie was the one burdened with sin. This also explains the huge time discrepancy in his Severance history. Burt was supposedly severed 20 years ago, but the first Severance office opened only 12 years ago, meaning Lumen was using Severance for much darker purposes long before the public knew about it. This revelation also gives us a clue of why Cobell walked away from Helena back in Episode 3. Notice how the camera and Cobell pay close attention to this driver. Cobell would know this guy is the modern-day version of Hitman Burt, meaning he's also severed. Lumen ordered Burt to take care of Irv, but instead of killing him, Burt buys him a one-way ticket out of Kier. The tragedy? Irv just found love for the first time, and now he has to leave it behind. This moment is heartbreaking, but is it the end of Burt and Irv? I doubt it. With Severance expanding its world in Season 3, we might see Irv navigating life outside Lumen's grip. Meanwhile, Miss Wong has completed her Wintertide Fellowship, just like Miss Cobell decades ago. But let's talk about her first name, Eustace. It's usually a male name, often spelled with an A. Perhaps the most famous Eustace is Saint Eustace, who was separated from his family and forced into exile, just like Miss Wong, who's being shipped off to a remote Lumen center in Svalbard. Lumen's Empathy Center is located on an isolated Arctic island. That's hilarious. They care so much about empathy that they send you to the middle of nowhere. Gretchen reveals to her husband that she kissed his innie, a kiss that reminded her of the man he used to be. But Dylan's outie? He's a burnt-out couch potato. She doesn't love him anymore. And in one of the most gut-wrenching scenes of the season, she breaks up with his innie too.
Gretchen!
Dylan is framed in front of a painting where a man's head is on the chopping block. This shot is intentional. The moment Dylan enters the elevator, it's over. He's checked every box on his resignation form. Guilt, shame, loneliness. It's tantamount to death. In this episode, we see Dr. Maurer with a Band-Aid, a result of the injury he sustained in Gemma's escape attempt. It's interesting how his Band-Aid is black instead of blue. He's staring at Cold Harbor file being 96% complete. He will have to say goodbye, and I got the feeling he's a little obsessed with her. I want to point out the ID number here on the Cold Harbor case file. It's the same number as Helly's that we saw in episode 8, season 1. Why would her number be associated with Cold Harbor later in the episode? Jamie Egan visits Helly at MDR. Considering the previous shot was of the export elevator hallway with the red arrow pointing down, we can assume he just came up from the test floor. He already knows about Cold Harbor, and that likely means he knows about Gemma. But something down there has made him very upset, telling Helly, "You tricked me, my Helly." And of course, Helly has no idea what he's talking about, and did anyone else think it was weird? He refers to her as Helly, not Helena, although that might just be his pet name for her. Whatever it is, I think this will be tied to some major twist in the finale, with Helly's ID the same as Cold Harbor's. I wonder if Helena is secretly planning to escape in Gemma's body. It's a pretty insane theory that would require the ability to transfer one's consciousness into another. And whether the technology might not be there yet, the motive for Helena to escape Lumen certainly is. She lives under the tyrannical rule of her father, was forced to go back to a work environment where she was nearly killed twice, and furthermore, she's developed feelings towards Mark. Another possibility is that there is another person living on the test floor. We can see what appears to be an identical room across from Gemma's. It doesn't have a file name like the others. Is this simply an empty room, or does someone live there? Whatever happens, the show is definitely setting us up for Helly to make her way to that export hallway and go down to the test floor. She was memorizing the directions on how to get there. The question is, what is she going to do when she gets there? And will anything happen with her chip when she descends? We know Gemma's chip is programmed to switch in this elevator. But what about Helly? Meanwhile, Mark and Devin meet up with Cobell, who is still driving Hampton's truck. It actually works out perfectly since it'll later be used to smuggle Mark into the Dimona birthing cottages. Dimona is a really odd name for a place to give birth, considering it's very close to Demon. Cobell tells Mark that if he completes Cold Harbor, Gemma is dead. Mark is rightfully uneasy, trusting Cobell, the woman who is secretly his boss, and knew that Gemma was alive this whole time. But he really has no other choice. She's their only chance to get Gemma back. Milchek calls Mark relentlessly as Drummond reminds him this was to be a monumentous day. We've seen Milchek's tough demeanor crack starting with his failures as the new department manager, his less than stellar performance review, and add the psychological effect of those weird Keir paintings. It's no wonder he eventually cracks at Mr. Drummond. In the end, it's not his fault Mark didn't show up to work. Anything that happens to Mark outside the office falls to Drummond. It's been hinted that Lumen has access to security cameras all over Keir, and we know that Drummond has followed Mark on at least one occasion. Mark ends up telling Milchek that he's taking the day off, promising him that he will be in tomorrow. We get the short moment with Milchek breaking down after his call with Mark as he stares at a picture of an iceberg. He's been under such tremendous stress and almost never shows his real emotions. Upon making their way to the birthing cottages, we learn some particularly nefarious things about Jamie Egan. Devin masquerades as, quote, one of James, implying she was impregnated by him. The phrase one of suggests there have been many such women brought here. Are they brought here to get an abortion, or are they here to get severed? So they forget they've given birth in the first place. What if Cobell would have had a close relationship with John, not only being a Wintertide fellow and bringing to him these schematics for Severance? It's been hinted that Cobell herself was once severed. How insane would it be if she had a child as a teen? Could that child be Mark? It might explain her obsession with him, keeping an eye on him when she lived next door, and even doing mom things like baking him cookies. The Twilight Zone connection. This episode is titled The After Hours, which is also the name of a 1960 Twilight Zone episode. In it, a woman named Marcia White discovers she's actually a mannequin, given a limited time to live in the real world. What if Gemma was always severed? What if the Gemma that met Mark in college was a test subject who didn't realize she wasn't real? What if Lumen staged her car accident just to bring her back? And then there's the revolving.
And one day, you will sit with me at my revolving.
In the Twilight Zone, mannequins take turns experiencing the real world. What if the Egan family does the same? Each member taking a turn to live outside. Maybe the board isn't a group of people. It's a motherboard containing the consciousness of every past Egan, waiting to be reborn. Final thoughts and predictions. Mark has one mission: save Gemma. But if he completes Cold Harbor, she's dead forever. Is this the moment we finally see the outies and innies merge? Is this how we break the Severance barrier? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you made it this far, make sure to like and subscribe, because the finale is going to be insane.